Welcome to the Big Play Cleveland show. I'm Gabriella Cruz alongside Chris McNeil, Nick Padone, and we are just going to recap a little bit over the weekend. I'm a little tapped out. It was a busy weekend at the ballpark. Lots of fun, though. Would have liked to have won 10 at home, but, 10 in a row at home. But our guards team looking good, and we'll get into it but because we have a very special interview here today. Vince Guerreri is here. We're going to talk about 10-cent beer night.
Yeah. 50 years now since 10-cent beer night.
Crazy that I feel like everyone's always been telling stories about it, so to conceptualize that it's 50 years ago is kind of crazy.
Yeah, definitely crazy, and it's nice to see the current guards have this attendance that's going on right now. I mean, you watch a Guardians game throughout a weekend, and it is packed in there, which is really nice to see. I remember when they did the name change, and there were a lot of people saying that this was going to be the kiss of death for the organization, and there were a lot of naysayers out there when they took Chief Wahoo away, and then they changed the name completely. But it seems like business is doing quite all right over there at the corner of Carnegie and Ontario, and hopefully that means some extensions are on the horizon. Guys that we want to see stick around for a while, Stephen Kwan, Josh Naylor, because they are having no trouble selling those weekend tickets. I think another sellout this past Saturday, so really good to see.
Yeah.
What were the vibes like there in person?
It's a lot of fun at the ballpark. I mean, I think I'm biased, but I just love going to work because it's beautiful. I like being outside, and I don't know if anyone has seen what we've really done with where those upper districts are, like the Paul Davis district and everything. It's gorgeous. I mean, both sides of the ballpark. You can go up there. You got a nice breeze. The sky was blue. You can get these views of the ballpark, but also the city. So I really love just everything about the ballpark. The vibes are high. People are excited. And it's a family atmosphere, too. I think that's something I've grown to appreciate about the ballpark. Can't necessarily get the same vibe all the time. Not to throw them under the bus, but a Browns game is a different experience. You know what I mean? You can bring the whole fam and not worry about, someone puking on you.
That's right. That's right. And speaking of family, you got Daniel Schneemann making his debut. His whole family was in attendance there, and they showed a lot of shots of him. First pitch he sees, hits a double.
I love it.
How fantastic is that? We've had a lot of great stories. David Fry had a lot of great stories this year. It's just nice to see that continuation. Another good weekend. Another guy contributing right off the bat.
And we need that in the infield right now, certainly with some of the other guys starting to taper a little, namely Gabriel Arias and Brian Rocchio not really doing that well. So it was nice to see Schneemann come up and kind of contribute in a big way right away, because that was a huge hit, too, at that point in the game.
Yeah. He put us in the game when we were completely
out
of
it.
It was
our only offense.
Yeah. and he saw one pitch and bam. No, it was really, the crowd was really excited for him. And
his parents were going nuts too. I love them.
The shots of his family were sweet. He was a really nice guy. I had the opportunity to meet him at spring training, and he was in on that chess tournament. I kind of like these stories of older rookies, who come up and things like that. Even David Fry, seeing him explode has been exciting as well. But actually, for Schneemann, we played a game higher or lower. And I ended up doing a bonus question to the person. I was like, higher or lower? Because you have to guess if the number is higher or lower than the trivia fact. I was like, Schneemann knocked in 1 run on his first MLB hit. And so they were like, higher. So we gave him a little extra love. I was like, proud of you, Daniel. Keep it up. And then we didn't spark any more offense after that. So I don't know that it did much, but we gave him a nice shout out. I think his family was really excited to be there. We were cutting to shots of his family I saw on Bally Sports. Happy for the guy.
Already making the trivia with Gab. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I just wanted to give him a little boost because we had nothing going for us at that time. Bonus, Schneemann. But get to the ballpark. It's a fun time. I am biased, but I'll see you there.
It is, yeah, and it's what we got going on right now in Cleveland. Not a whole lot of Cavs news as the coaching search continues. The Browns will have
mini
camp.
There on the coaching search?
Well,
you're on the inside. You're the guy in the know. Is there anything going on right now?
They're bringing guys in, So what more can you ask for? Kenny Atkinson rolled in here. James Borrego rolled in here. They're gonna now do some of the Spida connections. I like that Johnny Bryant, the lead assistant in New York, got his interview, which is something something to watch, I would say, for sure, because he coached on the Utah Jazz staff when Donovan was in Utah. So keep an eye out for Johnny Bryant. He was Tom Thibodeau's lead assistant over there in New York. We know how good they've been and how fun of a team they've been. So something to watch out for. But yeah, not a whole ton of news, at least nothing to really get that excited about. And then, yeah, no Browns, really. OTAs, we got the grainy iPhone videos, Chris. I like that meme that you tossed out there because there's not a whole lot going on with our Browns. So Guardians are what we got. Shout out the Monsters, too. I think they're in the Eastern Conference Finals, which is great. Yeah, that's what we got going on.
All right, well, let's take a break, and we'll come back with our Garage Beer featured interview. Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland show. We are joined by Vince Guerrieri in studio, a good friend of ours, a friend of show, and an excellent writer. So we're going to chat about you, Vince, and then also about your thoughts, 10-cent beer night, since we are celebrating that 50th anniversary. Our biggest question pre-show was, what would the cost of a beer at this point in time be to recreate the 10-cent beer night?
The full price at the time was 65 cents. So 10 cents is roughly 1/6 of the cost of a beer full price. And then I guess, depending on if you want the standard domestic swill or if you're paying for a craft beer, that would probably be, I don't know, maybe $1.50.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking. At the ballpark yesterday, we were speculating. I'm like, it's got to be like, what, $1? Like, that's like dollar beer night.
Could you imagine if they do that now? $1.50. Man, you'd be selling a lot of beers really fast, especially on a Saturday like we had this past weekend.
You could not do dollar dog night and dollar beer night at the same time. That would be a fiasco.
It really would. Although, I mean, they do the games on Fridays where they say, $2 pre-games, but they have the great good sense to cut it off when the game starts so everybody is, let's say, not fighting mad like they were that night in Cleveland.
So, the 50th anniversary of 10-cent beer night is this week. You wrote a great feature about this crazy event for Cleveland Magazine. Walk us, Vince, through June 4th, 1974.
Well, it was, I remember the 80s, and the 80s were a bleak time to be an Indians fan. The 70s were also a bleak time to be an Indians fan. The team was really going nowhere fast. It seems like from pretty much until the late 50s until the Jacobs brothers bought the team in what was that, 85, I think. The team was always on the verge of moving somewhere. They had serious talks with Minneapolis. They had serious talks with Seattle. They actually had a deal in place in the 70s when the new dome was built in New Orleans. They were going to play 40 home games a year at the Superdome. Wow. So it was kind of a rough time for drawing fans to the ballpark, so they tried to do whatever promotions they could come up with. Carl Wallenda, he of the tightrope walking family, walked a tightrope across the top of Cleveland Stadium, which just makes me want to lie down on the floor just thinking about it. Evel Knievel was there once for a rally around Cleveland night. My favorite promotion is one that they did in 1971 on Mother's Day. Everybody got a free can of deodorant, which, I mean, admittedly is useful, but, I feel like that's not the message that you want to send on Mother's Day. And they said, we're going to have a 10-cent beer night. And it was actually a fairly common and fairly popular promotion in the major leagues and the minor leagues at that point. There were all kinds of teams that were having nickel beer night, 10-cent beer night, something like that.
Okay, that's news to me. I'm glad you pointed that out because I don't think I ever put into context that it was kind of a running thing. I thought it was a unique thing that they experimented with.
Oh no,
and then
they had I think they had at least one in 71, and they had I think another couple in 73. Not sure I could find one from 72. So this is something that had been done with some regularity. And so in 74, they said, we're going to have 4 10-cent beer nights. And the first one was going to be June 4th. The problems started to arise the week previous. The Indians were playing the Rangers. That was their opponent on 10-cent beer night. And a week earlier, they were playing the Rangers in Texas. And Lenny Randle, I guess, popped off to the newspapers about Gaylord Perry. Gaylord Perry told Milt Wilcox, and Milt was one of the guys I talked to for this story. Milt was also, as an aside, he was supposed to be the starting pitcher for the Detroit Tigers in the second game of the doubleheader of Disco Demolition Night in Chicago in 1979. So wherever trouble is, Milt Wilcox apparently is not that far behind. But Gaylord Perry says to him, Lenny Randle should go down every time he comes up to bat tonight. And Milt Wilcox threw one behind Randall's head. And Mike Shropshire, who covered the Rangers for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, said, "This is the only time I've ever seen this happen. This is something that players think about all the time." He drops a bunt down the first base line. The first baseman runs into, the catcher runs in to grab it. Wilcox goes to cover first, and Lenny Randle just absolutely trucks him. And that starts a fight. And that starts a real fight. I mean, baseball fights are like high school fights. There's some jawing, there's some shoving, there may be a couple of haymakers get thrown. This was a real honest-to-God fight. So after the game, the manager of the Rangers is Billy Martin, who never met a fight he could walk away from. They said, "Are you worried about any reprisals when you go back to Cleveland?" And he says, "I don't think there'll be enough fans in Cleveland to worry about." And that was just
poking the bear that is Cleveland.
Right? There was the shot that was fired.
Right, and it's, it just kind of took on a life of its own. Joe Tate said, "I want to see everybody show up at the Indians game so we can stick it in Billy Martin's ear." Pete Franklin just took it and ran with it, and then on the following Tuesday there were 25,000 fans there, and a lot of them were not there to watch the game. I talked to some people who said, "Yeah, we were making our way over," and I mean, people were already lit walking into the ballpark. I talked to at least one player, and one umpire actually told me they got a contact high being on the field that night. So there were a lot of people engaging in a lot of controlled substances.
And bringing fireworks, too.
Yes, they were.
Guys, this is nuts.
It brought fireworks into the stadium.
Maybe I just didn't know all this, okay.
It started out relatively harmless. There was some mooning. There was some streaking, just goofy stuff. But, the tenor of the night turned. I mean, as people got more lit, they were throwing fireworks.
Into the bullpen, from what I understand.
Well, it wasn't, I don't know if how much you remember of the baseball layout at Cleveland Stadium. There was no bullpen per se.
Right.
The warm-up mounds were right next to the dugout.
Right. Okay.
And strangely enough, when Aspromani was the manager, Ken Aspromani was the Indians manager that year, the Indians were in the first base dugout, and the Indians pitchers would warm up on the third base side because he wanted to see his pitchers warming up. So, but yeah, I mean, there were fireworks that were getting thrown. They called in, the pitchers from the bullpen area into the dugout. I guess they got the players' wives out of there by like the sixth inning. I mean, things were definitely starting to take a turn for the worst. And in the bottom of the ninth, the Indians were actually coming back. They were down 5-3 going into the ninth. Aspromani sends up 3 straight pinch hitters. Every one of them gets a hit. Game's tied. People are going nuts. And a couple of drunken yahoos decide they're going to run and steal Jeff Burrows' baseball cap. Jeff Burrows was the right fielder for the Rangers. They run over. They fall down. Burrows falls down. Billy Martin looks out from the third base dugout and says, "Oh, my God, they're attacking our player." And he grabs a bat from the bat rack and says, "Come on, we're going to go get him," and leads what has been referred to as a cavalry charge out to right field. And if you've ever seen the picture, it's great. I mean, they're all carrying bats. Yeah. I think some of them were wearing helmets. And then, Ken Aspromani looks out there and says, "I think Billy Martin might need our help." And then all the Indians run out onto the field as well. And then pretty soon, everybody's out on the field.
Oh, my
God. And, they have to declare a forfeit because there was no way that order was going to be restored.
So I guess, how did it really end? How did it, because it was chaos, the Indians forfeit. How did they get all the people off the field and, get everybody into bed for the night?
This is, they told me Mike Hargrove, who actually played for the Rangers at that point. This was his rookie year with the Rangers.
Oh, really? Okay.
He said they took us out to the bus under police escort, took us back to the hotel, and told us not to leave the hotel until noon the next day.
Wow.
So they got out of there fast. The umpires got out of there, and I guess the fans just kind of ran around and tired themselves out. And plus, they called. Obviously, they called in a lot of police once they realized what was going to go down. And I actually found one guy. He came to one of my book talks last year. He says, I was a cop in Cleveland that night. And that's the guy that I led the Cleveland Magazine story with. He said that it came over the radio, all units proceed to Cleveland Stadium for a riot. He says, and we come off the Shoreway and we get ready to turn onto East 9th Street, and 2 naked women run out in front of the car. I said, oh, it's going to be that kind of riot.
That is super fun. We're talking all things 10-cent beer night and some fun Cleveland Indians memories with Vince Gary. Don't go anywhere. We have more of the Big Play Cleveland show right after this.
Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland show as we remember the 50th anniversary of 10 Cent Beer Night with Vince Guerrieri, just giving us the play-by-play on what that was like back then. This is exciting for me, kind of, only because I think I really just thought it was, because I couldn't put myself in that time and with all these details.
Right.
I guess I just thought it was a beer thing. Like everyone got plastered while they were there. I didn't realize, there was all this foreshadowing ahead of time. People were coming in lit. They were already prepared. They got their firecrackers. They were all the weed, other things that were going on with this. I didn't know it was a whole thing.
As the game progressed, people were kind of self-selecting into that crowd, and people were self-selecting out. So a lot of the sober people were leaving, and so you were left with all of the riffraff, right?
That's true. One of the guys I talked to for this story was Les Flake, the beer guy. And he had he wasn't selling beer that day. He had just graduated high school.
Are you talking about beer guy?
That's the beer guy.
All
yes.
right.
Wow.
He said he was selling hot dogs because he wasn't old enough to sell beer.
He was hot dog guy at the time.
He was hot dog guy that night, and he said it was the 6th or 7th inning, and he looked around and he said, "Yeah, I should go home. This isn't going to get any better." My friend and colleague Jim Ingram, who writes for us at the Chronicle, wrote at Lake County for a long, long time. Actually wrote a biography of Mike Hargrove. He was there. He was, I think, high school age, and it was the same thing. He looked around at about the 6th or 7th inning, and he said, yeah, I should be somewhere else now. And that's, the people who were looking for trouble stayed, and the people who realized there was going to be trouble and wanted to be no part of it left.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm reading a one-liner just on Wikipedia, and it was like, Dan Coughlin of the Chronicle Telegram attempted to interview fans but was punched in the face twice. Like, it just keeps getting more and more escalated as you read along in what that night was like. I don't know. Is this just a thing unique to Cleveland? Would other cities, why is it just us?
There were actually, most games that are forfeited are usually forfeited because of some kind of managerial protest or something like that. But there are 3 really good examples, and they all occurred in the 1970s of games that were forfeited because of what were essentially fan riots. The last game of the Washington Senators in RFK Stadium in 1971 ended in a forfeit because fans, again, were running around on the field and trying to get souvenirs, and there was also this undercurrent of discontent with Bob Short, who was the Senators' owner, who was actually moving the team to Texas to become the Rangers, oddly enough.
Oh.
And the other big one was Disco Demolition Night, which was going to be a fiasco. This is another one of those things. People talk about 10 Cent Beer Night. How did they not know this was a bad idea? And the answer is because it hadn't been up to that point. But I feel like Disco Demolition Night was one of those instances where you really say, how did you not know this was going to be a bad idea? Bill Veck's son, Mike, and a local disc jockey whose name escapes me right now, came up with this promotion. You bring a disco record, you get in for 98 cents to Comiskey Park. The crowd, by comparison, at Cleveland Stadium for 10 Cent Beer Night was about 25,000. The crowd for Disco Demolition Night, I've heard anywhere from 50 to 60,000.
Wow.
With
like
another
football game.
10,000 people outside. Wow. They said like the turnstiles turned off of their stands. it was packed to the gills, and it was a doubleheader. And between games, they were going to bring all the disco records that they had collected out to like this little shack in the outfield and blow them up. And Milt Wilcox, who I said was one of the pitchers for the Indians on 10 Cent Beer Night, was going to start for the Tigers in the second game of the doubleheader. And he says, yeah, we went out to the outfield to try and get warmed up, and they blew up the records. And I don't know what they used, but it was too much. And he said that, the concussion of the blast almost knocked him down.
Wow.
And then, I mean, it carved this great big crater out of the outfield. Fans started streaming onto the fields. The ones that didn't get their disco records taken for the demolition started throwing them around like Frisbees. And, I mean, it was an absolute unchecked disaster. But since then, there's only been one more game that has been forfeited. That was at Dodger Stadium in the 90s. So I guess fans have learned to behave a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you would think maybe like A's fans on opening day, we'd have a modern day thing, but no.
I think people, they've publicized the ramifications of doing these sort of things, which usually result in some sort of jail time. As someone, Vince, who has written books about crazy Cleveland sports and weird Cleveland sports,
might I add.
a
weird
book that
moments in Cleveland sports.
You're just saying that because you're in the acknowledgments.
That's right.
A book that we've all read. Where does 10 Cent Beer Night rank for you in terms of just bizarre things that have happened in this city?
I mean, that's got to be it. That's the one that everybody gravitates to. One of the people I talked to for the story was Randy Galloway, and he had covered Dallas sports for years and years and years. He covered the Rangers, he covered the Cowboys. He was one of those big national sports writers when that was a thing. And he says, to this day, everything I've ever seen, 10 Cent Beer Night is in my top 5, maybe even my top 3.
Wow.
Really?
It was just one of those things where everybody who has been there is just kind of amazed that it happened, and everybody who wasn't there claims they were there because they want to take part of it. I was able to talk to John Adams, the guy with the drum.
Yeah.
The Cleveland Magazine actually turned me loose on this story a couple of years ago. Their 50th anniversary was 2022. And so they did all these little vignettes, and I did the one on 10 Cent Beer Night, and they said, I'm telling you now, write a feature for the 50th anniversary. And I said, I'm on it. And I talked to John Adams, and he says, through the years, 720,000 people have told me they were at 10 Cent Beer.
That's funny.
And 820,000 people told them they were at Len Barker's
Perfect game. Yeah.
That's
I
funny.
knew that was coming. Vince, real quick as we wrap the segment, appreciate you popping in here. I have another
My privilege.
A crazy story that you were the one that told me about, and his name has been in the news recently these last couple of days.
Oh no.
When Donald Trump tried to buy the Buffalo Bills. I never knew that before you told me that in Dave's garage.
Donald Trump actually kicked the tires on a lot of deals. He tried to buy a Major League Baseball team in the 80s. I know that they very seriously bid for the Indians at that point. Also looked at the Mets. I think he actually put in a serious bid for the Twins as well. But yeah, when Ralph Wilson died, there was a serious bidding war to try and buy the team. Obviously, the Pegulas, who own the Buffalo Sabres, ended up buying it. But yeah, Donald Trump really tried to buy it, and it sounded like he did some, let's say, really interesting things in his effort to do so.
Yeah, definitely a story that bears checking out because I kind of similar to this 10 Cent Beer Night convo. I remember we were talking about that in Dave's garage, and I was like, what? So definitely something good to go Google.
So the Indians at one point almost had George Steinbrenner as their owner,
Right?
as well as Donald Trump as their owner.
Well, not at the same time.
Not at the same
Yeah.
time, but both bidding.
I was going to say,
we could have lived in those realities.
about 10 years apart this happened.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's
That is
incredible to think about.
really fun stuff. Vince, appreciate you as always.
It was
popping in
my
here.
pleasure, I promise.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Make sure you go follow Vince on social media at Vince Guerra. Make sure to go follow all of his work as well. Some I know you rolled your eyes, but some really good writing, man. We always appreciate
Yeah,
reading it.
thank you.
Oh, you flatter me.
Thank you, Vince. Alrighty, we are going to step aside more of the Big Play Cleveland show when we return. Don't go.
welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland show. Big shout out to Vince Guerreri for coming on. Always fun to hear his stories.
Yeah.
And it's like a little peek inside one of his books or one of his pieces. So definitely check out his stuff. To me, guys, my modern day thing that I'll be chatting about forever is when Jose sleeped Tim Anderson.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And you
How
were able to
goes
say that you were
Anderson is
there.
iconic.
That was my favorite game that I ever was at, and I knew it in the moment that history was unfolding, and I just wham! It was so second nature. I was like, oh no, it's about to go down. I had my video going immediately. I was all up in it. I was so excited for it, and that has to be one of my most favorite memories ever, being at the ballpark.
What's funny about that one, Gab, is I was going to be at the ballpark that night, but my friends and I decided we were going to just hang out at one of our other friends' house and watch the game there because Jake Paul was fighting that night. And we now the joke is we really saw the best fight of the evening was before Jake Paul, and it was during the Guardians game when
I'm
Jose
so glad I
knocked
didn't
out
pay
Tim
for that
Anderson.
when I got paid to watch the Jose fight. It was incredible.
For sure. For sure. Alrighty, I think it's time to bring in Jensen Lewis for our Bringing the Heat segment. Jensen has been super busy doing some college baseball stuff as well. So, Jensen, we appreciate you joining us here on Big Play as you do every week. What's going on, my friend?
Guys, great to be with you. And pretty crazy weekend out here in Tucson for the regional here in Arizona. And it was kind of in soccer terms, the region of death with the four teams that were involved, and Arizona and Dallas Baptist, the top two seeds, Virginia third, and Grand Canyon fourth. West Virginia ended up getting past everybody. They went 3-0, and so they're on to super regionals for the first time in their program history. So, guys, I'll tell you what, I'm getting on the flight here in a little bit, but I'm not going to miss the 106, 107 here during the day. Everyone says dry heat. I know I've lived here for 4 years in Scottsdale a while ago, but God, I mean, there's no getting used to this. I feel like it's just ridiculous. I don't know how these guys got through it, but testament to them for being able to battle through.
Yeah, I don't know. I was complaining about the humidity at the ballpark yesterday, but I'm sure that that's not even comparison to being that hot.
Yeah, it's definitely hot out there in Arizona. Another thing that's hot is our Cleveland Guardians. How you guys like that for a segue?
Very well done.
Jensen, how do the Guardians match up with the Kansas City Royals? Because we have a massive, massive series on our hands here this week.
Yeah, Nick, and kind of the thing you look at throughout the season is, how teams are playing in certain instances. And I think for me, it really boils down to a couple of things. Kansas City starting pitching is far and away much better than what they were this past, even past couple of years. And obviously you're going to face first out of the chute, Seth Lugo leading the league in ERA, and then knowing kind of where they've been, not only from rotation depth with what Reagan's done, Brady Singer, Michael Wacha, but the back end of their bullpen has really improved as well. They brought in a couple of veterans this offseason to team with James McCarr, who's the closer. But let's face it, it comes down to Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvador Perez. And Salvi, I said it on MLB Network the other day, he's the Camus of catchers. He just continues to age, like the great wine of Camus, out there in Napa Valley. And what he's doing at the plate is just surreal for his age right now and his experience. And then Bobby Witt Jr. playing like an MVP candidate. Those two guys are the engine that drives this club. It's going to be exciting. Can't wait to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, definitely going to be exciting. Logan Allen is a guy that's been a little bit of a roller coaster as of late. Earned runs given up over the last 5 starts are 7, 0, 0, 3, and 7. What is it, Jensen, from your analysis of him that makes him kind of so hot or so cold in these starts?
Yeah, Nick, it happens sometimes to pitchers where, you feel like you're going through your work week really well. You feel like you're repeating your delivery, and sometimes you just miss a little more consistently out over the big part of the plate. Your stuff kind of flattens out a little bit. And for me, I feel like he's a guy that ends up making great adjustments as the year goes on. And I realize, it's only been a year plus for him in the big leagues, but he's a cerebral guy. He's smart. He understands what makes him tick. And I think he'll be in a spot moving forward here these next couple times around the rotation. He'll get on a much better run.
Oh, yeah, you go, Chris.
So you got Jose Ramirez not only doing it with the bat, doing it on the base paths. You know, Tom Hamilton called him baseball's most complete player right now. We had the comparison that he made to Barry Bonds. Where do you come out on Jose Ramirez and what he's doing right now?
Well, the one contrast I think we can draw in the comparison is that we know Jose never took steroids, so let's get that one out of the way.
Yeah.
But as far as a couple things that stand out, you know, the Bonds treatment really came to fruition, of course, when he set the record, you know, back in the day of course in a single season. We saw Bryce Harper at one point in the more modern era where, you know, he was walked even with the bases loaded. Was walked, I don't know, 6-7 times in that Cubs series, I remember. And it kind of put him in a little bit of a tailspin for about a month, but he ended up rebounding. For Jose, it's both sides of the plate, guys. And traditionally when we see him, the left side is where the most power usually comes from. The right side, not as much. But right now, I mean, the splits are off the charts. It is really a matchup nightmare for any opposing manager at this point. And the way that David Fry is swinging the bat, we have yet to get Josh Naylor going again the way he started the season. It's pretty formidable when you think about where Jose's consistency is, the emergence of Fry as a day in and day out contributor, and the back of the baseball card for Josh Naylor this last couple of seasons here in Cleveland. That's, again, I said it on the air the last week or so. It's not the 90s Indians 1 through 9. They're a hell of an athletic club, and they can beat you in so many different ways. We haven't had that, guys, probably since the 2016, 2017 games, you know, when they were winning 100 games and, you know, the 22-game win streak. So I think the lineup versatility has been more of a peak this year than perhaps we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years.
You know, speaking of Barry Bonds and David Fry, here's where I wanted to drop my fun fact. Since the RBI became official, only 3 Major League Baseball players have put up the following numbers over a 14-game span. 5+ home runs, 15+ RBIs, 10+ walks, 3+ stolen bases, 1,400+ OPS, more home runs than strikeouts, 12+ team wins. Your boy David Fry is among Barry Bonds and Babe Ruth in that category. How long do you think David Fry is going to stay this hot?
Forever.
God,
Put him in the hall. Let's go.
Forever, Gab. I mean, this is the fun part about our sport. And we are such a heavy statistical day in and day out sport that you can look in so many different directions for comparisons and trends. But now we have a pretty good idea through the first 2 months of the season that David Fry is here to stay, and he's playing at an all-star caliber level. And you know, we've seen that teams that have, you know, the best records in their respective leagues in the first half of seasons get a pretty significant amount of guys end up playing in the Midsummer Classic. I think we're pretty safe to say, barring injury, Jose Ramirez, Emmanuel Clase are going to be in Texas. The way David Fry is playing right now, I think you have to include him. You know, the way crazy to say it, guys, Ben Lively is pitching like an all-star. I mean, this is yet again another Chris Antonetti, Mike Chernoff special of making an under-the-radar trade or acquisition, and particularly on the pitching front, it ended up playing out and being such a significant contributor immediately after they get them. It is just mind-blowing how this works every single season, or at least it feels like almost every other season. But yeah, I would anticipate at least 3-4 guys that are wearing, you know, the American League jerseys and being in their Cleveland Guardians jerseys for the All-Star game in Texas.
That's awesome.
Let's talk about another guy who's been just tearing it up right now, reliever of the month for May, Emmanuel Clase. What can you say? 0.0 ERA for the month of May. I mean, this is just incredible, Jensen. How do you evaluate where he's at right now?
Yeah, right. Me and Gab are knocking on wood, knocking on the set over here.
This is fake brick, so it's wood back here.
Yeah, Chris, it's surreal, some of the numbers of what he's put together. And I can remember fielding questions from fans last year when it was kind of touch and go with some of the results and the blown saves. And I just pointed back to what 50+ one-run games that group played last year. I mean, that you remember the year prior, and he was on kind of this superhuman pace for that season as well. As between him and Edwin Diaz for basically the best closer in the league that year. And relief arms year in and year out are not built to be this consistent and this dominant. And I think that's where you have to have appreciation, part number one. Part number two is to have a 101 mile an hour cutter and command of a 94 mile an hour slider and really never be in danger of giving up loud contact day in and day out. Like it just doesn't happen. I mean, I as a former reliever look at some of these auxiliary numbers and I'm like, this is solar system kind of stuff. We just don't see this on Earth. Like he is just extraterrestrial in what he's able to accomplish. And I hope he continues to do it. He deserves all the credit in the world. I think his 5th reliever of the month award now as announced this week. And the scary part is the best may be yet to come. How much better he can get, I don't know, but there are still signs there that he's continuing to improve, and that's wild to wrap your head around.
Awesome, Jensen. Appreciate you joining us this week and every week. Safe travels home, and we hope the Guardians stay hot as you return to Cleveland here. Thanks a bunch.
You got it, guys. We'll talk next week.
Talk next week. Jensen Lewis, always fun to have him on the show. Even when he's out there covering the college baseball playoffs, really cool of him to join us.
It's amazing to watch the progression of this season, too. We started off in the preseason, and we were talking to him through spring training. Are we going to score any runs on this team? Is the team going to be any good? And now we look at we're scoring an additional run over last year per game, over 5 runs per game versus 4. And it's just a lot of fun, like we've touched on at the ballpark. And it's just so much fun to be a fan of this team right now.
Alrighty, we're going to step aside. When we return, fill in the blank. We hit you guys with our top Cleveland sports headlines this week. Don't go anywhere. More of the Big Play Cleveland show right after this.
Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland show. I'm Gabriella Cruz alongside Chris McNeil, Nick Padone. Continuing this Guardians talk, I kind of wanted to ask Jensen, but I'll ask you guys. What do you think the future for Carlos Carrasco is?
Probably pretty bleak. I hate to say that because he is such a good vet to have around, but I think he's given them what they thought he'd give them when he arrived. You know, a guy that could come in, eat some innings. Then when the injury to Shane Bieber and Gavin Williams happened, he became that much more important. When they added Cookie Gab, I kind of made the comparison of it was like a more feel-good scenario of what they did when they added Lucas Giolito last year. They needed just a vet in the mix that could eat up some innings, and Cookie's done that. But I think now we're ready to take that next step. Go add via trade a serious arm, and that could be kind of the last of Carlos Carrasco, which is a bummer, but I'm sure they'll keep him around in some capacity for the vibes of this feel-good season.
With that said, the starting pitcher I trust the most right now is
probably Ben Lively. How about that? 5 wins on the young season right now. He seems, has that veteran presence there in the clubhouse, obviously. So you know that he's not going to go out there and really put your bullpen in a bad spot by not going deep into a game. So if I'm just pitching one guy and I say, who do I have the most confidence in? It's Ben Lively.
How about the young guy I expect to break out for the Guardians is?
I'm really still going to stick with Kyle Manzardo on this one. I mean, he was a top prospect. He's starting to see the ball, hit the ball a lot better. Schneemann, it's his first week up, so I'm going to tamper expectations there. I think Manzardo really has the ability to be really good for the Guardians, and they need him to be that good. Remember, they traded away Aaron Savali to make that trade for Manzardo happen. Right now, I think you could use a guy like Savali in the starting rotation the way that things are for the Guardians, so they need that trade to pay off, and they need Kyle Manzardo to be really good.
How about the MLB ballpark I'd most like to visit is?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I'll tell you what, I was watching a little bit of the Yankees game yesterday. I was looking to see what the enemy is doing these days, and they're out there playing at Oracle Park out there in San Francisco. I mean, what a beautiful stadium that the Giants have. It's just unbelievable. You got McCovey Cove. You've got all the sights. I think it looks beautiful from afar. I would love to visit that ballpark.
I'm going to tell you one that I hate, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before. I've had to. to. It's Toronto. I've been to Toronto. It's like watching a game inside of a tomato soup can. You can't see the ball. It's impossible to find the ball because of the dome is like so gray. Everything's so gray. Yeah. I mean, Vladdy was hitting home runs, and I'm like, is that foul? Is that in the infield? No, it's in the second row of the center field. So it is a weird place to catch a game.
Have you guys been to San Diego to watch a game?
Not yet. I want to get out there, though.
Yeah, Petco Park is probably my favorite. I love Progressive Field, but that was the most fun time I've ever had was being in San Diego's ballpark. And of course, where my seats were right next to Cleveland people.
That's awesome. Yeah. There are a lot of Cleveland people in San Diego, so not hard to find at all.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. And that's what I can appreciate about some of our newer modifications to our ballpark is it reminds me of how it was in San Diego and how you can overlook the city in certain areas. So I don't know. But yeah, you should get out there. It's a good time.
Alrighty, cool. That is our fill in the blank. When we return, we're hitting you guys with our big play bets this week. Don't go anywhere. Our big play bets this week are presented to you guys by our friends at Tipico Sportsbook. You hear us talk about Tipico every single week. They're changing the way that you bet with their cashback rewards system where on all of your bets, you could get up to 5% cash back on Tipico. Hey, Guardians season is here. Bet a $30 on the Guardians. It just has to be a $30 Guardians game bet, and you're going to get a $2 bet credit for every single hit that they have in the game. Use our promo code Cleveland150. Really helps the show out. You got to be 21 years or older to gamble in Ohio. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Guys, the NBA Finals is here. We are
finally
suffered through a week without NBA basketball. Who you like, Chris? The Mavs or the Celtics? I'm pulling for Kyrie Irving and the Mavericks to win this ring.
And I'm in the same boat. I think the odds makers right now are favoring Boston. They're favoring the Celtics. I like the Mavs. I like Luka. I like Kyrie. You know, initially when Kyrie left Cleveland, there were a lot of hate here. I think that's gone by the wayside, obviously with him hitting the biggest shot in Cleveland Cavaliers history. Now that hate all resides in Boston. Boston absolutely hates Kyrie, and I would love for Kyrie to go take Boston out in the NBA Finals here.
Absolutely. We are all in. Are we bringing back the Mavaliers? That was a question that Dave asked on the Friday bet stream. Are we bringing it back?
Why not? Why not? We might as well have a little bit of fun with this. Kind of roll with Kyrie, what the Mavs are doing right now. Everybody hates Boston. I hate Boston. You hate Boston. Go Mavs.
All right, what we really want to talk about, the Memorial Tournament. This week in Ohio, in Dublin, out there
Beautiful
in Maryville.
Dublin, that's right. A lot of people packing the bogey in after the rounds and on the course during the day. Course action starts on Thursday, continues through Sunday. I was looking, Nick, at a little bit of the odds that they've posted right now. You got Scotty Scheffler. Hopefully he can avoid the Dublin PD. If he can, he's 15-4 odds right now. He is your odds-on favorite. You got Xander Schauffele. He is up there at 7-1. Rory coming in at 8-1. I like Rory potentially. He hasn't played great at Muirfield historically. Last year, I believe he posted a top 10, so he's somebody to look at. I like, though, coming in at 18-1, Victor Hovland. Won this thing last year. I like for him to go back to back for the first time since Tiger Woods in the early 2000s went for 3 straight. So Victor Hovland is going to be your champion at Muirfield this week.
And you'll be down there, Chris.
And I'll be down there Thursday and Friday, skipping work out there on the course with all the other yuppies enjoying our golf in Dublin.
So make sure you guys lock in some golf bet picks. We got golf right here in our own backyard of Ohio this week. Make sure you lock in those bets on Tipico Sportsbook. Like we said, use our promo code Cleveland150 on Tipico. It helps the show out a lot. Gab, we've got some surprise guests in the works for the show, so make sure you guys follow us on Twitter at Big Play Clee Show, YouTube, Instagram, and we appreciate you guys, as always, tuning into our show on Bally Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you guys next week.